Eliana didn't always walk with her head down, but life had a way of teaching her to. By 26, she'd buried too many dreams, too many regrets, and too many versions of herself she wished had never existed. Her arms bore faint scars she never explained. Her smile was a carefully practiced mask, and her heart, well, she didn't let anyone close enough to see it bleeding. Church was a place she hadn't returned to in years. Too many stares, too much judgment, too many sermons that reminded her of everything she wasn't. She told herself she was too broken for grace, too used to be wanted, too far gone to be seen. And yet, something kept stirring deep inside her. It started with a flyer, crumpled and half-soaked in the rain, taped to the window of a laundromat. It read, "Come as you are. We won't ask you to be perfect, just present. Saturday night healing service. 7 p.m. The Warehouse Church." She stared at it for 10 full seconds before walking away. But that night, she couldn't stop thinking about it. By Saturday, she stood outside the doors at 6:59 p.m. and almost walked away. But something made her pause. Not a voice, not a sign, just a quiet ache. A whisper she'd ignored too many times. You don't have to heal to be loved. Inside was dim lighting, folding chairs, a soft guitar playing. Nothing like the mega churches she remembered. It felt raw, real. As she sat in the back row, arms crossed, prepared to leave if anyone asked her name, the pastor stepped forward. No microphone, no spotlight, just a Bible in one hand and tears already in his eyes. He opened with one line. This message is for someone who thought they had to clean themselves up before God could love them. Her heart thudded. She sat frozen. Then he said it. Jesus says, "I still want you, even with the scars." That night, Eliana didn't cry because of guilt. She cried because of relief. She wasn't invisible. She wasn't beyond repair. She was wanted, even now. Eliana didn't return the next week. Not because she didn't want to, but because the truth scared her. For so long, she had built her identity around the lie that she was unworthy of love, that she was a mistake, that everything she had done and everything done to her had stained her too deeply to ever be whole again. But those words from the pastor haunted her in the best way. Jesus still wants you, even with the scars. She'd replay them at night when the world went quiet. She'd whisper them when old memories clawed their way back into her mind. And eventually, curiosity gave way to courage. By the third week, she returned. This time, something was different. A woman named Lila greeted her at the door, not with forced cheer, but with sincerity. She offered a warm smile, a cup of tea, and didn't ask a single question about Eliana's past. Instead, she said, "I'm just glad you're here." That was all it took. Eliana sat in the second row this time. When the worship started, something inside her cracked. Not because of the words, but because of what she saw. Other people crying, other people kneeling, other people with visible pain, not hiding it, but worshiping through it. That night, the pastor spoke about the woman who touched the hem of Jesus' robe. She didn't ask for attention. She didn't ask for an audience. She just wanted healing, and Jesus gave her more than that. He gave her identity. Eliana wept, because no one had called her daughter in a long, long time. But in that room, she felt it. Not judgment, not rejection, just belonging. After the service, she lingered, and Lila approached her again. "Want to talk?" Eliana nodded. For the first time, she told someone her story. Not the clean version, but the raw one. The messy chapters, the mistakes, the secrets. Lila didn't flinch. She just listened, cried with her, then said, "God's not afraid of your scars. He still calls you chosen." That night, Eliana went home, knelt beside her bed, and prayed a real prayer for the first time in years. "Jesus, if you still want me, I'm here." No thunder, no lightning, just a peace so deep she couldn't stop shaking. Eliana's mornings began differently now, not with dread or guilt or shame, but with hope. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, like sunlight leaking through broken blinds, like fresh air after a long, stale season. She still had bad days, still flinched when her past crept in, still stared too long at the mirror, wondering if she was worth the redemption people talked about. But now, she didn't stay in those moments as long. Something had shifted. She joined a women's Bible study at the warehouse church. It was awkward at first. She didn't know the lingo, and sometimes when others talked about the peace they felt, she wondered if she'd ever experienced that fully. But she kept showing up, and the more she showed up, the more the walls came down. One evening, during a testimony night, a woman named Jenna stood up and shared how her husband left her after she had miscarriage, how she nearly took her life, how God met her in the psych ward and whispered, "I'm not done with you." Eliana couldn't stop crying. Because it was her story too, just with different details. When Jenna sat down, Eliana did something she never thought she would. She stood up, hands trembling, voice shaking. She said, "I used to think my story was too messy. But I'm learning. Jesus doesn't flinch at messy. He doesn't need my perfection. He just wants my presence. And he still wants me, even with the scars." The room was silent. Then someone clapped. Then another. Then the entire group stood and applauded. Not for her performance, but for her bravery, for her breakthrough. That night, she journaled one line. "I'm starting to believe I'm not damaged goods. I'm a testimony in progress." Fall had arrived. The kind of autumn that carried a chill just sharp enough to remind you change was coming. Leaves curled and crisped under Eliana's feet as she walked the long way home from work. The sun was setting, but it wasn't golden. It was bruised, the sky a deep purple gray, heavy with the threat of rain. That day had wrecked her. It started with an email, a name she hadn't seen in years. Jason, the man who had hurt her the most. No subject line, no message body, just a forwarded chain email, like it had been sent by mistake. But seeing his name again, it was enough to unravel everything she thought she had healed from. Panic, shame, fear. All of it came rushing back like a flood through cracked levees. When she got home, she didn't turn on the lights. She just sat in the dark, knees to chest, breathing shallow and fast. Her heart pounded with memories she couldn't outrun. Nights he yelled, nights she bled, nights she wished she didn't wake up. She hadn't thought of those days in months. But one name pulled the scab from the wound, and suddenly she felt like the scared, silent version of herself all over again. And then the lies came. You're not really healed. You're still just a broken girl pretending to be whole. No one wants someone like you, not even Jesus. She cried until there were no more tears. But then she remembered something. A single sentence from her journal, written weeks earlier. "I don't need to feel healed to still be his." That truth hit her like a breath of clean air in a smoky room. She reached for her Bible, flipping through pages stained with highlighter and tears. Her eyes landed on Isaiah 43 verse 2. "When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And through the rivers, they shall not overwhelm you." She whispered the verse aloud, then again and again, until her breathing slowed, until the lie lost its grip. The next morning, she went to the warehouse church. She sat in the same second-row seat. Lila found her after service. She took one look at Eliana and didn't ask a thing, just wrapped her in the kind of hug that makes silence feel like sanctuary. They sat on the steps outside, leaves falling around them like grace. "I thought I was over it," Eliana said. "But I'm not." "You were never meant to carry it alone," Lila replied. "Healing isn't a straight road. It curves, it dips, but still moves forward." Eliana looked down at her arms. The faded scars were still there. She used to hate them, hide them. But now there was something else. Not shame. Evidence. Evidence that she didn't die there. Evidence that she kept going. Evidence that she was still here. That week, Eliana wrote something new in her journal. "Even the scars are part of the song now. And I think Jesus still sings over me." Winter came gently that year. Instead of harsh winds and violent storms, it arrived like a whisper, soft, slow, full of pauses. Snow dusted the streets like powdered sugar, and the nights came earlier, inviting people to slow down, to breathe, to reflect. For Eliana, it marked the first holiday season where she didn't feel like she had to fake her joy. She was still healing, but something had changed. She didn't feel ashamed of the process anymore. She felt held, carried, and more than anything, chosen. One Sunday in early December, Pastor Mark stood before the congregation and announced something unexpected. This Christmas, instead of focusing only on receiving, we're asking every person in our church to become the miracle for someone else. It was a simple phrase, but it stirred something deep in Eliana. Later that day, while journaling, she wrote, "Maybe I've been waiting for the miracle when Jesus was waiting for me to become one." She wasn't sure what that meant yet, but she prayed, "Lord, show me who needs the version of me that you've been healing." The answer came a few days later. At a cafe near her apartment, she noticed a girl sitting alone, hands fidgeting, eyes red. She looked about 19. Something about her reminded Eliana of, well, herself. Something said, "Go talk to her." She hesitated, then obeyed. She sat across from her and simply said, "Hi, I know this is random, but you look like someone who needs to know she's not alone." The girl broke down in tears. Her name was Avery. She had just left an abusive relationship, was living in a women's shelter. Felt like no one saw her. No one cared. Eliana listened, not as someone trying to fix her, but as someone who had once been her. And then she told Avery her own story. The scars, the silence, the breaking, and the breakthrough. Avery's eyes widened. "Wait, you were me?" Eliana nodded, smiling softly. "And you can be me, too. He still wants you, even with the scars." From that moment, something ignited in Eliana. She began mentoring Avery, walking with her through hard days, sitting beside her in church, reassuring her when flashbacks came, reminding her that healing wasn't about perfection, it was about presence. One evening, after a church candlelight service, Avery turned to her with tears in her eyes. "You're my miracle." But Eliana shook her head. "No, sweet girl. Jesus is. I'm just a reminder." Christmas morning came with no big gifts, no grand party. Just Eliana, a cup of tea, her journal, and a sense of peace so deep it made her cry. She wrote, "I used to think the miracle was something that would happen to me, but now I know it's something God does through me. My scars didn't disqualify me. They commissioned me. I was the girl no one stayed for. But Jesus never left. Now I get to stay for others, because I know the power of presence." Months passed. Spring returned, and with it came bloom. Avery eventually gave her life to Jesus. She asked Eliana to be there when she got baptized. Eliana stood at the edge of the water, tears streaming down her cheeks, as Avery rose from the water with joy bursting on her face. Pastor Mark turned to the congregation and said, "This is what it looks like when redemption comes full circle. From brokenness to healing to purpose." Eliana wasn't the same girl who walked into that church months ago. She was no longer afraid of her scars. They were holy now. That night, she returned home, lit a single candle, opened her journal, and wrote the words she never thought she'd believe. "I am not just loved. I am chosen, not in spite of my story, but because of it. Jesus didn't just save me. He sent me, and I'll spend the rest of my life reminding others, you're not too broken to be loved." And somewhere in heaven, she knew Jesus smiled, because the girl with the scars had become the miracle, and he still wanted her, scars and all.